there was a thumb on the scale for the president's version of events that I felt was a level of political influence that I had never seen in 37 years at CBS News.
Do you think Bari Weiss needs to be removed?
Oh, gosh, yes. Look, she's a lovely person, but this is like somebody walking up to me and saying, there's a 747. There are 400 people on it. We need you to fly it to Paris. I'm going to decline because I don't have a clue.
Wow. That was how 60 Minutes veteran correspondent Scott Pelley describes his former boss, Bari Weiss, after he was fired last week. CBS News is, quote, on fire, according to Pelley, while being run by Bari Weiss, who he and other fired correspondents accuse of editorial interference and tipping the scales in favor of Donald Trump. Yet, it looks like Bari Weiss's reward for doing all that will be to have an expanded portfolio. Axios is reporting that CBS's parent company, Paramount, has held, quote, preliminary conversations with several candidates for a business side counterpart to Bari Weiss, according to two sources familiar with the network's inner workings. That search, Axios says, quote, implies that if Paramount Skydance's deal with Warner Brothers Discovery goes through, Bari Weiss would oversee all news editorial across both CBS News and CNN. Gulp. I want to bring in Oliver Darcy, who has been diligently covering this story for viewers of this program and for his newsletter Status. Oliver Darcy, the incentives have to be opaque, right? They're obviously not success. The ratings are down. They're obviously not trust. They've destroyed the most trusted broadcast in this country, one of the most trusted broadcasts in the world. They're obviously not taking broadcasts and making it digital, because 60 Minutes did that better than anything on television. What is she being rewarded for doing?
That's a very good question. And there's also broken trust, too. Let's not forget, between the staff that she's supposed to lead and Bari Weiss herself. So there's no trust at all, not only with the viewers, but also with the staff. And so it's questionable, highly questionable, how she could lead a much larger newsroom in CNN. I think it's clear that David Ellison sees eye to eye with Bari Weiss on her editorial perspectives. They clearly must be ideologically aligned there. And that's why he was so enamored by the Free Press to purchase it for an absurd $150-some million and bring her over to run CBS News. The question is really whether she's even capable in any sort of way of running CNN. I mean, I was talking to a CNN executive earlier this week, and they pointed out, I'll just read you the quote. They said, the notion that someone who is openly failing at running editorial for 7 U.S. shows can add 50 more global ones and 150 hours of live news programming a week, not to mention a massive global website, is absurd. And it's hard really to disagree with that. You look at the damage that she's already caused to CBS News, which is really tiny compared to a network like CNN, which is, it's got an international network. It's got the U.S. network. It's running live programming on sensitive topics 24/7. I can't imagine how she's going to oversee that. But this reporting is correct. As far as earlier this year, Paramount was poised to give Bari Weiss editorial control over CNN. Maybe the 60 Minutes debacle has changed that. We don't know. But that certainly was the plan.
So you did some incredible and intrepid reporting while you're still at CNN about the Chris Licht chapter. I interviewed Don Lemon for my podcast this week, and he had nothing complimentary to say comparing Bari Weiss to Chris Licht. What is the vibe inside CNN about basically Chris Licht 2.0, except really super empowered by the corporate structure?
Honestly, Nicole, I think that one of the worst newsrooms disasters I have covered prior to this was CNN under Chris Licht. But it feels like when I'm talking to people inside CBS News, the situation is so much more dire. I mean, keep in mind, things were bad under Chris Licht, but you didn't see like Anderson Cooper going to the New York Times and saying this place is on fire and Chris Licht needs to be fired, right? Like the idea, like that the notion that the face of CBS News was fired by Bari Weiss and then went out and spoke out so strongly against her really tells you everything you need to know. And so inside CNN, people are worried. People are very alarmed. I mean, they're watching this very closely. It's like they're watching Bari Weiss basically deform CBS News, knowing that within weeks, they could be next. And I think they're hoping that David Ellison wakes up and realizes that she's not, responsible enough, doesn't have the experience to run a network as complex as CNN. But, it really remains to be seen. I mean, I think when you talk to people close to David Ellison, they will tell you David really likes Bari Weiss. He really believes in her. And it's unclear to me whether he is under the illusion that all she needs is a seasoned business manager by her side to get this done. It's not a business problem that CBS News has. It's an editorial problem, and it's coming from the editor-in-chief herself, Bari Weiss.
Some of the things we've learned about in terms of editorial interference include Bari Weiss asking Scott Pelley to change the tape, the video, the images, and the content inside his coverage of Minneapolis while that city was on fire after ICE agents killed 2 American citizens who were protesting. We've also seen at her directions, I Salute You, Marco Rubio was a piece on the evening newscast that she oversees, that she was responsible for. She's been accused of, quote, murdering 60 Minutes. What is the sort of degree of concern about what she will do to CNN's news programs?
There's a high degree of concern, Nicole. I mean, earlier this week, in fact, some of the CNN journalists, the top CNN journalist anchors, Anderson Cooper, Christiane Amanpour, Wolf Blitzer, they were participating in this memorial for Ted Turner, the founder of CNN. And they all vowed to uphold, to the best of their ability, the editorial independence of CNN. But the reality is that if David Ellison comes in and installs Bari Weiss as editor-in-chief, the editorial independence of CNN is over. It's been breached at that point. Yeah. And David Ellison promised, for instance, the 60 Minutes staff that they were going to have editorial independence, as Scott Pelley revealed in that New York Times interview. It didn't work out so well. So words are easy. I'm sure that David Ellison will promise editorial independence for CNN. He's already done that. But the actions speak a lot louder than the words. And if you look at what's happened at CBS News and you're a CNN anchor or CNN journalist, it's hard not to be worried. And it's not even the outright instructions that Bari Weiss might give, like in the case of Scott Pelley and this Renee Good story that he was working on. It's a lot of self-censorship that often happens, too, when someone like Bari Weiss takes over. People who work inside these networks, there are thousands of them. They have mortgages to pay, kids to feed, kids to get through school. And so if they know it's going to be problematic, I think, for new management, if they insert certain language into scripts or stories, I think what you see often is a chilling effect, and people start to not use those words, not be so aggressive, to soften the coverage. And that also worries me. Yeah, the self-censorship.
Oliver Darcy, something you never do. Thank you for bringing us your reporting on this story. To be continued.